Question 5. What exactly is meant by the sizing that you have to implement when you include a column within your Bootstrap row? To more specifically show you what I'm talking about, let's take a look at this code. To give you a better idea of what I'm talking about, let's take a look at this grid example within the Bootstrap example documents. So you see here that we have a row that's split up into 3 columns. Now, we've labeled these call MD4. What exactly does that mean? Well, the call should be obvious, it's a column. But the MD in the 4 might be a little bit less clear. So let me explain what that means. The 4 essentially is how much of the row's horizontal width do you want this column to take up? The way that Bootstrap's grid system works is that you have essentially 12 points or 12 blocks to divide up between all of your different columns. If you want to have 3 columns of equal width, you will split that up into 3. So 12 divided by 3 is 4. So you can essentially see here that we have 3 columns of width 4. That means that we have 3 columns of equal size. But what if you don't want your columns to have an equal width? Well, you can do that too. So here's another example where we have 3, 6, and 3. Again, these all add up to 12. This is something you got to make sure that you do. And essentially, these will have 2 thinner columns on the sides, but then 1 bigger column that's double the size of the 2 side ones in the middle. And for one last example, we have one that's 8 and 4. Essentially, you'll have 2 columns, one of which is double the size of the other. Now, these columns always go from left to right, so our larger column will be on the left and our smaller column will be on the right. So hopefully that explains what exactly those numbers mean. But what about MD? What exactly does that mean? MD is one of a series of different tokens that you can include within your columns, and essentially it changes the way that your screen will interact with a changing browser size. So let's see what this looks like in action. One of the great things about Bootstrap is that it scales your different columns in your grid based on the size of the screen that's viewing it. That means you can develop one application for both desktops, larger desktops, that'll also work on mobile phones, tablets. Any device, any resolution will still look okay. So let's see what happens if I zoom in, which will essentially simulate having a smaller resolution. So you can see that our columns are no longer next to each other, but are instead stacked. And that's good, because that we can still see them and it still fits on the screen and everything looks clear and concise. Now, the reason that they stack like that is the MD keyword. Essentially, the MD tells us what our target resolution should be. MD is for standard size screens such as laptops or maybe a smaller desktop monitor. And essentially that will control when our grid will stack. So if we have a smaller target resolution, we would use the SM keyword for small rather than the MD. And that means that we would stack our elements a lot sooner because we have a smaller resolution and we're targeting for that. I encourage you to experiment with the different tokens ranging from XS for extra small to XL, extra large, recently added in Bootstrap 4, to see how they interact with different resolutions and different aspect ratios. This is an increasingly device-centric world where we're going to have all sorts of different devices accessing our websites. So we have to make something that's accessible for no matter who's trying to access it, if it's someone on their phone or someone on their multi-monitor setup at home. So check it out and make good use of this, because this is one of the most important features of Bootstrap.